Welcome to our Get SFU Ready session for international transfer students, and a big congratulations on your acceptance to SFU. We're so happy that you've chosen SFU as part of your academic journey, and I really do hope that your experience here far exceeds your expectations. My name is Karen, and I am one of the international student advisors here at SFU. And I have the honor and the privilege to work with an amazing team in the International Services for Students Office to serve our hardworking and inspiring students. I really look forward to welcoming you to SFU in person, hopefully sometime very soon. We will begin today's presentation with my colleague Ize, who is Intercultural Engagement Coordinator with the International Services for Students Office, and Ize is also an SFU student. I will then provide you with an overview about the services and supports offered through the International Services for Students, or ISS office. Then we'll move on to discuss study permits, enrollment requirements for international students, and key updates related to COVID-19. I will note again that information presented today is current as of today, July the 17th, and is subject to change. You will also see this disclaimer at the bottom of each presentation slide. I am going to try to keep the presentation piece as brief as possible to give you the opportunity to ask questions that might be on your mind. Following the session today, you will receive a follow-up email from us with a resource list and a brief feedback survey for you to complete. Your feedback is really important to us, and it will help us to inform and improve our services. So I'd really appreciate you taking a minute or two to complete the form and share your feedback with us. At this time, I'd like to invite Ize to the floor. Ize?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Ize, and I'm a third-year student at SFU. I study biomedical physiology and biomedical engineering, and I'm here to talk to you about the Global Connections program. So you can see on the next slide a little bit of an overview. So it's a peer-led mentorship program that connects new and current SFU students, and it provides the opportunity to learn about the culture of SFU while making new friends and receiving transitional support from our volunteers. And you can also request to be matched with a community leader, and that offers you an opportunity to have your questions about all aspects of life at SFU answered in a one-on-one manner, and they support you throughout the term. And on the next slide, you can see who can join us and if you're interested, because the Global Connections program is designed to help new students from international pathway. And that does include students coming from Canadian post-secondary institutions or Canadian high schools. And you will be meeting other SFU students through various events and activities. There'll be opportunities to learn about other cultures and share your own culture with others and making meaningful connections throughout the entire term. And due to the current situation, the program will be completely held online. So that means that wherever you are in the world, you can actually still be part of the program and still engage with us, because we'll be keeping this in mind. And on the next slide, you can see that even though we're online, we're still keeping our informative sessions about the topics that will help you beyond your academic study at SFU, as well as our social events. And of course, as a member, you always receive priority invitations to any of the events that are organized by students or by staff before it gets opened up to the rest of the SFU population. And on the next slide, you'll see the co-curricular record, which is an official document, an official SFU document that tracks your involvement at SFU. And as part of the Global Connections program, you can attend as little or as much events as you want. As long as you fulfill the program requirements, you can receive recognition, which is, a bonus to your SFU experience. And the next slide, you'll see my contact information as well as the website link. So the application for fall 2020 are currently open, and you can apply by going to the SFU ISAP website or just find more information there as well. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can just email gcmp@sfu.ca and I'll make sure to answer to the best of my ability. On the next slide, I wanted to remind you to complete University Prep Step 2. It's prepared by your specific faculty, and it gives you accurate and timely information about enrolling and planning your courses. And it takes approximately 30 minutes, and it really sets you up for academic success at SFU. So I highly recommend completing it. It's great. Do it, please. And it's, as you can see in the checklist right now on the slide, you can just go to your SFU email, you can just accept the course invitation, complete in 30 minutes, enroll in your courses, and then you get a chance to win some prizes. And you get another thingy on your co-curricular record. So it adds to your involvement at SFU. Yeah, so yay, University Prep Step 2. That's it from me. I'll just hand it back to Karen for the rest of her presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Ise, for sharing that with us today. We really do encourage you to take part in the Global Connections program. This program will help you to create connections with other students and to form a sense of community. And that's something that's always important, but it's especially important now given the very unique challenges that we're all facing during this time. University Prep is also a really great resource, and it aims to ease your transition to SFU and help you succeed with your academic journey at SFU as well. So we're going to move along now to talk about our office. And our office is the International Services for Students, or ISS office. The ISS office provides supports and non-academic advising services to all international students at SFU. When I say non-academic advising, this includes information about immigration, like your study permit, your visa, your work eligibility, and it also includes information about medical insurance and transitional support and programming. We also support students who are new to Canadian culture and Canadian post-secondary institutions, including newly arriving permanent residents, returning Canadian citizens, and refugees. As an international student at SFU, it is your responsibility to ensure that all of your immigration and legal documents are maintained and up to date in order to study here at SFU. However, we do understand that navigating government regulations and policies can be challenging at the best of times, and certainly so now. Within the ISS office, we have 3 international student advisors, including myself, who are all regulated immigration Canadian consultants. We are able to answer your questions related to Canadian immigration documents, including how to apply for your study permit, how to apply for your visa, and such questions. We also advise on enrollment requirements for international students, conditions you must comply with as a study permit holder, and work eligibility requirements for on and off-campus employment. All consultations with our international student advisors are completely free and completely confidential. Medical insurance in Canada and our Canadian healthcare system may seem complicated and challenging to navigate. If you have questions concerning your medical insurance while you are studying at SFU, you are also welcome to contact us for support. The ISS office also provides programming and events for SFU students and referrals to various community engagement opportunities. For academic-related matters, please contact your department advisor or your faculty advisor for assistance. Our office also provides information about various study abroad, exchange, and field school opportunities. Due to COVID-19, our in-person services are temporarily suspended, but we continue to provide supports to students remotely through live chat, virtual appointments, which we offer through Zoom, email, or phone. Please visit our website for the most updated advising schedule and for more information on how you can connect with us. I would also encourage you to familiarize yourself with our website, as it's a really fantastic resource. It includes welcome guides for new students, instruction guides for permit and visa applications, information about medical insurance, and information about our programs and events. Now we're going to shift a little bit and talk about study permits. To pursue your studies in Canada at SFU, you must hold a valid study permit. As today's participants are transferring to SFU from another Canadian institution, you should already hold a study permit if you are here in Canada. I understand from the registration pre-questions that some participants are currently outside of Canada, and it sounds like some of you are also planning to depart Canada very soon. In this case, I noted that some of you who are currently outside of Canada have a study permit that has expired since you left, or it is nearing expiry. It is our understanding that most undergraduate courses for the fall 2020 term will be administered online. If you are currently outside of Canada and your study permit has expired, note that you may begin your program at SFU online or remotely from outside of Canada without holding a valid study permit. You will, however, require a valid study permit for all in-Canada components of your program of study. If you are currently inside Canada and holding a valid study permit, note that you must maintain valid immigration status for the duration of your stay and apply to extend your study permit before it expires. Your study permit is your immigration status document, which allows you to remain here in Canada and to study at SFU for a specified period of time. I understand many of you had questions about how to apply to extend a study permit and what documents are required. I would advise that you begin by reviewing our 2 study permit instruction guides on our website, which walk you through the process step by step. After reviewing the guides, please do feel free to connect with us if you have any questions. The instruction guides will also be included in our follow-up email to you after this session. If you are currently outside of Canada and studying remotely for the fall 2020 term, note that in order to return to Canada to study, you will require a valid study permit, and you may also require a temporary resident visa or an electronic travel authorization, depending on your country of citizenship. If you are outside of Canada and your study permit has already expired, or if your study permit will be expired by the time you are intending to return to Canada, you can apply for a new study permit from outside of Canada. At this time, Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, continues to accept and process study permit applications outside of Canada and study permit extension applications inside of Canada. IRCC is currently advising to apply online. Given the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, IRCC does recognize that there are challenges faced by applicants in obtaining certain required supporting documents for their applications, such as, undergoing an immigration medical exam if needed or enrolling biometrics. IRCC has confirmed that until further notice, applications will not be refused for non-compliance due to failure in completing certain necessary steps. As you will all be transferring to SFU from another post-secondary institution, you are required to notify IRCC that you are now studying at SFU by completing the online Designated Learning Institution, or DLI, transfer process. This step is very important. If you do not complete this step, IRCC doesn't know that you are now here studying at SFU. I know many of you submitted questions about this piece in the registration, so I will be including a link with instructions for how to complete the DLI transfer in our follow-up email to you. We'll now move along to enrollment requirements for international students. As a study permit holder, you are expected to comply with the conditions of your study permit and actively pursue your studies in Canada. This is defined by IRCC as remaining enrolled in a minimum part-time course load and making timely, reasonable progress towards completing your program of study. To be considered actively pursuing studies as required by IRCC, you may be enrolled in a full-time or occasionally in a part-time unit load. Generally speaking, you must be enrolled in 9 or more units in a given term in order to be considered to be full-time for immigration purposes in that particular term. Whereas if you are enrolled in less than 9 units in a given term, you would be considered to be part-time for immigration purposes in that term. You can review the full-time definition at SFU in detail on our website, and this information will also be included in our follow-up email. If at any point during your studies you feel like you need to take a term away from your study, we do strongly advise speaking with an international student advisor first in order to discuss any immigration-related considerations. If you enroll on a full-time basis in the spring and fall terms at SFU, the summer term within the same calendar year can be considered a regularly scheduled break for immigration purposes. I do want to note that part-time student status in the spring term or fall term, or not enrolling at all in the spring or fall term, will impact your eligibility to work on and off campus, as well as your eligibility for the post-graduation work permit. Okay, we're going to move along now to working on and off campus. As a study permit holder, you may be eligible to work on campus and off campus if you meet certain requirements. You don't need to apply for a separate work permit to work on or off campus. However, you must meet a set of specific eligibility requirements in order to work on or off campus in Canada without a work permit. To work on campus, you must have a valid study permit and be enrolled full-time in the term you would like to work. Your study permit must also contain conditions which speak to your ability to work in Canada if meeting the appropriate eligibility requirements. To work off campus, the eligibility requirements are quite similar. In addition to meeting all the requirements for working on campus, so valid study permit and full-time enrollment, in order to be eligible to work off campus while studying at SFU, you must also be enrolled in a program leading to a degree, diploma, or certificate that is at least 6 months in duration. Eligible students may work up to 20 hours per week off campus during regular academic sessions or full-time during a regularly scheduled break. If you plan to work on or off campus during your studies at SFU and you were not previously authorized to do so, so for example, if you do not have the appropriate work authorization conditions on your study permit, you can apply to change the conditions of your study permit to have the appropriate work authorization remarks added. And that's definitely something that we would be able to assist you with if you had questions. If you are interested in participating in the SFU co-op program to gain practical work experience in your field while you study, you must apply and be accepted into the SFU co-op program. To work in an SFU-approved co-op, you will require a co-op work permit in addition to your study permit. You will require a co-op letter from SFU in order to apply for a co-op work permit. While you are enrolled in a full-time co-op term at SFU, you would be considered to be full-time for immigration purposes during that term as well. Many of our students hope to remain in Canada and apply for a post-graduation work permit upon completing their program of study. The post-graduation work permit is an open work permit that you may be eligible for after completing a degree, diploma, or certificate program of at least 8 months in duration at SFU. In order to apply for a post-graduation work permit, you must meet a set of eligibility criteria. And One of the eligibility criteria is that you must have maintained full-time student status in Canada during each semester of your study program, with possible exceptions being made during an authorized leave from study or in your final term of study. As an undergraduate student at SFU, the spring and fall terms are considered regular academic sessions for immigration purposes. Therefore, to be eligible for the post-graduation work permit, you must enroll as a full-time student in each spring and fall term while studying at SFU. As mentioned earlier, if you enroll full-time in the spring and fall term, the summer term within the same calendar year can be considered a regularly scheduled break and would not impact your eligibility under the post-graduation work permit program. Given all of this information, if there is ever a time during your studies where you are considering part-time enrollment or not enrolling in a spring or a fall term, please do reach out to speak with an international student advisor to discuss potential impacts so that you are very well informed before you make your decision. We'll move along now to a few COVID-19 related updates. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been many changes, ranging from institutional policy changes to special measures that have been implemented during the past few months at both the provincial and federal government level, including Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. On July 15th, 2020, IRCC officially announced a temporary public policy exempting applicants in Canada from the requirement to give biometrics. And just as a reminder, biometrics are your fingerprints in your photograph. This means that effective immediately, if you are applying from within Canada, for example, if you're applying to extend your study permit, you do not need to give biometrics in order for your application to be processed. This applies to new applications as well as applications that are already in progress. Under normal circumstances, you are required to provide biometrics if you have not done so for an application to come to Canada in the past 10 years, unless exempted. Please note that this is still required if you are applying for a study permit from outside of Canada at this time. If you are applying for a study permit from outside of Canada and you are required to provide biometrics, you would pay the $85 biometrics fee together with the study permit processing fee when you submit your study permit application. After you submit your study permit application online, you would receive a biometrics instruction letter in your MyCIC account. You're likely aware that many visa application centers around the world are either temporarily closed or operating at a limited capacity at this time. As such, note that IRCC has confirmed applications will not be refused or closed for non-compliance if you are unable to provide biometrics at this time. If biometrics collection is currently suspended in the country where you are residing, you will need to monitor the Government of Canada website and then book an appointment to enroll your biometrics once biometrics collection resumes, if you're required to provide them. For those outside Canada submitting a new initial application for a study permit, IRCC has also implemented a two-phase approval process to better facilitate online learning for international students. We are waiting for more details to be announced by IRCC regarding what exactly this new approach will entail and how it will work. As mentioned earlier, you may start your studies online from outside of Canada without a valid study permit. A valid study permit is required, however, for all in-Canada study in your program at SFU, even if your studies have moved online as a temporary measure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. With regard to the post-graduation work permit and studying online, IRCC has made several updates. What they've clarified so far is that if your in-class courses are being moved to an online-only format because of COVID-19, you're still eligible for the post-graduation work permit. If you have a study permit, or if you have been approved for a study permit for a program starting in the fall, but you can't travel to Canada at this time due to travel restrictions, you should also still be eligible for the post-graduation work permit, again, providing you meet all of the other eligibility criteria under this program. If you're in this situation, you may begin your classes while outside Canada and complete up to 50% of your program while outside Canada if you can't travel to Canada sooner. And this measure is in place currently until December the 31st, 2020. However, it may be further changed, further modified, or further extended as well. To manage the outbreak of COVID-19, the Government of Canada has implemented travel restrictions to stop most foreign nationals from entering Canada unless they are exempted. These restrictions stop most non-essential or discretionary travel to Canada. The travel restrictions on entry from the US are in effect until July 21st, 2020, and restrictions on entry from countries other than the US are in effect until July 31st, 2020. Under the current rules, to be eligible to travel to Canada, you must meet two requirements. You must be traveling for an essential or non-discretionary purpose, and you must either be traveling directly from the United States or exempt from the travel restrictions. So to build upon the above, in order to travel to Canada from the United States as a study permit holder, you must be able to demonstrate that you are traveling to Canada for an essential purpose, as well as having a credible quarantine plan in place, and more to follow on this piece. In order to travel to Canada from a country other than the US, in addition to meeting the above mentioned requirements, you must also have a valid study permit or have been approved for a study permit with a letter of introduction issued on or before March 18, 2020, and have a temporary resident visa or electronic travel authorization unless exempted. Regardless of where you will be traveling from, currently you must demonstrate that the purpose of your travel is essential. Note that the onus is on you to satisfy the Canada Border Services Agency, or CBSA, officer at the port of entry that your purpose for traveling to Canada is essential and non-discretionary. To assess if travel is essential or not, some of the factors that may be taken into consideration could include how courses are being delivered for the fall 2020 term. Are courses being offered online? Are they being offered in person? Or are they offered in, a hybrid? If courses are being delivered completely online for the fall term, why do you have to be physically in Canada to start your program? Do you have any ties in Canada? Are you already established in Canada? In other words, is Canada your primary residence? So these are just some of the factors that may be taken into consideration. Ultimately, the decision with regard to entry to Canada does rest with the CBSA at the port of entry. Thus, the officer at the border would determine whether you're eligible to enter Canada. The officer will be the one to determine if you meet the travel exemptions, whether or not you are coming for an essential purpose, and whether you have a satisfactory quarantine plan in place. We are waiting for more details to be announced by IRCC regarding how essential non-discretionary travel for international students in Canada may be assessed. Our office will also host another online workshop on the topic of travel considerations on August the 7th, which you may want to attend. It is possible, and we are very hopeful that by then we will have more updates to share with you. To comply with the Quarantine Act, currently all international travelers arriving in Canada, unless otherwise exempted, must quarantine for a period of 14 days. And this is true even if you are not showing any symptoms related to COVID-19. Upon your arrival at the port of entry, you will be examined by the CBSA officer to determine whether you are eligible to enter Canada and have a satisfactory quarantine plan in place. My wonderful colleagues have prepared a self-isolation guide, which is on our website, and we will be including a link to that guide in our follow-up email to you. So please review this if you are outside of Canada and planning to return anytime soon. I would like to emphasize that the travel restrictions in place are subject to change, to be lifted, or to be further extended, depending on how things progress with COVID-19. As such, we do advise our students to monitor the Government of Canada website for the latest updates with regards to travel restrictions, and of course, for any other COVID-19 related immigration updates as they become available to us. Before I wrap up the presentation and open up the floor for questions, I'd like to share a few tips with you. If you are inside Canada and holding a valid study permit, be sure that you maintain your valid immigration status and apply to extend your study permit before it expires. If you are outside Canada and no longer holding a valid study permit, or if your study permit is nearing expiry or will be expired before you are able to travel back to Canada, be sure to give yourself plenty of time to apply for a new study permit. In the follow-up email that I send you, I will include links to our online resources, which includes information about how to apply to extend your study permit and also how to apply for a study permit from outside of Canada. We have also published a COVID-19 frequently asked questions website where we post COVID-19 related updates related to immigration and medical insurance for international students at SFU. We continue to add to this page as we receive updates from the Government of Canada. As new SFU students, I'd also recommend that you review the welcome guides for transfer students on our website, as these are really helpful in preparing for your first term at SFU. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll also be including a link to our self-isolation guide in our follow-up email to you. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve rapidly. As such, policies and procedures, for example, the travel restrictions, may be modified without notice depending on how the pandemic evolves. So please do be sure to monitor the Government of Canada website for the most current and up-to-date information. We would also be so happy if you were able to attend our upcoming workshops. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we will be doing one session on travel considerations on August 7th, and also one session on medical insurance and supports for new international undergraduate students on August 12th. We will also be hosting a Q&A session for families of new international students in late August, so please stay tuned for more information about that. Now we are going to move on to our question and answer session. As such, I'm going to end the recording. For those of you who are watching the recorded version of this session, thank you so much for watching. Welcome to SFU, and please do connect with us if you have any follow-up questions.